So personally, I wouldn't sign Matthias de Ligt if I was Manchester United, but it's not because I don't think ability-wise he is good enough, as I do really like him as a defender, but in just a bit when I come on to how I think de Ligt and Lisandro Martinez would work in a back four, and towards the end of the video when I come on to the pros and cons of signing either de Ligt or Branthwaite, I think that will become a bit clearer. The main issue with this transfer for me is de Ligt's injuries last season as well as the cost. We've just had a season where the consensus amongst most of the fan base is that the main reason for us looking like a mid-table side for most of the season is down purely to injuries and a lack of squad depth. But now when it comes down to who people want to sign this summer, that seems to be a factor that everyone is overlooking. It's the reason why, even though I do love both Michael Olise and Ezequiel Palacios in terms of their ability, I just don't think either, particularly Olise, are viable options for United, just because my gut is telling me that they are going to pick up injuries throughout the season, which given the costs like with de Ligt is just too much of a risk for me to take. Now de Ligt doesn't worry me as much as someone like Olise, with the Palace winger suffering 2 hamstring injuries this season, but to me he just strikes me as a player who, like Raphael Varane, is going to be constantly in and out of the side, with him having a few recurring ligament injuries over the past 1 or 2 seasons. I'm not saying that de Ligt won't be able to play 35 to 45 games a season, but I think given that he'll likely cost around £50 million and be on at least £15 million a season, which is what he currently earns at Bayern Munich, and that's not even factoring in signing on fees or agent fees, I just think it's too much of a risk for United to take this summer. If we sign de Ligt and then around October time he picks up an injury that keeps him out for 4 to 6 weeks, and we are forced to play someone like Maguire or Lindelof at centre back, then we can't sit and blame bad luck, especially when you factor in what happened with Mason Mount last season. But before I go any further and talk about de Ligt, Martinez and Branthwaite, if you do want to pick up any Euro 2024 jerseys, new season jerseys, or any retro international or club jerseys, head over to Jersey FIFA. You can use code Atlantis at checkout. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. So in regards to Branthwaite and de Ligt, surely we're only going to be signing one, as signing both to me would just be too much of a financial outlay, both on transfer fees and salaries, considering we also need a backup right back to replace Wan-Bissaka, likely a left back who isn't as injury prone as either Shaw or Malacia, and maybe even another centre back as well with players like Maguire and Lindelof depart, with Varane already gone. But for now, let's ignore the injuries and the squad depth issues. Would de Ligt be a good signing for Ten Hag's United? Well, I personally would prefer either Bremer or Simakan, as I just think both are better when having to defend in a high defensive line in 1v1s, with Simakan also probably costing maybe 10 to 15 million pound less in terms of the transfer fee, and likely being on around 5 to 7 million pounds less than de Ligt as a salary. However, if de Ligt was to stay fit, which I don't think you can assume, as I just think that's completely naive, but for the purposes of this analysis, let's just assume he is fit for most of the season, how would he improve United? Well, in terms of ability, de Ligt of course would massively improve United defensively, in the defensive third and inside his own box, which should allow United to sit deeper when needed, knowing that de Ligt has the aerial ability and the physicality to deal with crosses into the box. He is aggressive and reads the game well from crossing situations, is able to get out quickly to block shots, and has the physicality needed to go up against strikers like Ollie Watkins, Haaland and Darwin Núñez. In possession, I don't think he's as good as either Martinez or even Todibo when it comes to playing those line-breaking passes through the centre, but I do think he's better than Branthwaite at doing this. Although I do think that Martinez and de Ligt as a centre-back pairing is better than Martinez and Todibo, as whilst I did originally like the idea of Todibo and Martinez, if a more aerially dominant left-sided centre-back like Branthwaite or Bastoni, who would be my dream option, came in to primarily play as a left-back, having thought about it for a few weeks, I do think United needs someone who is more physically and aerially dominant than Todibo alongside Martinez, which de Ligt would be. My one question with de Ligt is how good is he when he pushes high up the pitch and basically becomes either a wide or central centre-back in a back three in a 1v1, with one of the backline pushing up into the midfield in order to condense Ten Hag's press. Now he's not slow by any means, but he hasn't played in an aggressive pressing man-to-man system, as I think Ten Hag will have to play next season. Yes, he has played under Ten Hag before, but Ten Hag's defensive line was not as high at Ajax as some people claim. Most of the time both Daley Blind and de Ligt would hold their positions in the back line, with Ajax not moving to a back three but instead holding a back four most of the time in the press, meaning that neither were really left as isolated as I think the centre backs in Ten Hag's system will have to be next season. I also think it's a lot different when you are playing at Bayern Munich, Juventus or Ajax in this type of system, because naturally due to the quality of the squads technically, compared with the rest of the league, just throughout an average game I don't think there were as many situations where de Ligt had to push high up the pitch and would be left in 1v1s, as I anticipate he will face at Manchester United against most Premier League sides who now play a far more expansive and possession orientated style, as the teams that De Ligt faced in Serie A and the Eredivisie prior to around 2022-2023. Because defensively, Ten Hag is evolving his system. He's not going to be using the same pressing and defensive setup as he did at Ajax because of how the game has evolved in those 3 or 4 years since. And so whilst I think De Ligt without doubt would improve United defensively, particularly in deeper areas of the pitch, I think if Ten Hag is going to look to push one of Martinez or De Ligt higher up the pitch during the press, or have one move into wide positions in order to create a 3-man back line against the opposition's front three, I think there will be games where we do see Martinez and De Ligt struggle against certain forwards, such as Ollie Watkins, Haaland or Son, who may have the edge over them in terms of running in behind or overall physicality. But who would I prefer, Branthwaite or De Ligt? Well, I think £50 million max for both. And even then, I don't think the De Ligt deal is as cheap as many people are making out. Yes, Branthwaite may cost around £10 million more, but I think that gets cancelled out once you factor in that De Ligt will likely earn maybe 100k more per week than him, as well as the agent and signing on fees for the De Ligt deal, which will surely be a lot higher. And so I don't really think that the transfer fee alone is a reason to sign De Ligt over Branthwaite. De Ligt is the better technical defender inside of the box, and at this stage he can use his physicality a lot better in ground and aerial duels, but Branthwaite is a few years younger, and he should be able to develop this with the right coaching. In possession, whilst both are good ball playing centre backs, they do excel at different things. De Ligt is far better at playing those shorter, incisive passes into players between the lines, whereas Branthwaite is a better long passer from deep, whether this is forward down the channel or across the pitch to switch to play. But given that the majority of the time, United centre-backs will have the ball in the middle third against a low compact block, De Ligt's ball playing ability is probably a lot more suited to United's style of play than Branthwaite's. But really and truly, it depends who United bring in at left back. I assume that United primarily wanted Branthwaite to come in to initially play at left back, where at times he would play more like a left-sided centre-back when Martinez pushes up from the back line into the press, whilst also providing the aerial ability next to Martinez that I think the back line needs for balance. But signing Branthwaite to primarily play as a right-sided centre-back to me just seems a bit odd. Whilst he is very two-footed, this is usually from longer passes, not those shorter passes between the lines. And I would just prefer Branthwaite receiving the ball on the left where he can open up his body and play forward, rather than having to constantly do this with his right foot, which I think De Ligt can do a lot more comfortably from that side. And so if Branthwaite was brought in to play in that Guardiola Nathan Ake fullback role on the outside of Martinez, playing as a left-sided centre-back in a back three when United press high, I think I'd prefer Branthwaite, as I just think when it comes to turning quickly and having to race back against an attacker and defending 1v1 in the channels, he excels a lot more at doing this than De Ligt. However, if United want a more traditional left back like Shaw or Kirkes for example, with De Ligt or Branthwaite on the right, then I would prefer De Ligt, as I just think as a centre back pairing, De Ligt and Martinez has a lot more balance than with Branthwaite and Martinez. And so it's hard to pick one or the other until we know the other defender that United want to sign. If they want a traditional left back who can push forward and provide over and underlaps in the final third, then I'd prefer De Ligt. But if it's a more conservative fullback, then I think the fact that Branthwaite could play that role as well as at centre back does give him a slight advantage. But overall I'd probably go with De Ligt, but that is ignoring the injury issues that he had last season. But we would also have to bring in another centre-back to replace Lindelof or Maguire, as well as a left-back as well. Only signing De Ligt and expecting Shaw and Martinez to stay fit for most of the season, to me seems incredibly naive, and could massively derail United's season if one or two of these players are out for an extended period. But for me, either Branthwaite or De Ligt would be a B- sign-in, whereas I do think there are better options on the market for United to target, which I will discuss in a future video.